Welcome back to MMA Al Dente. I'm here to talk about Gerald Meerschaert versus Andre Petroski. Meerschaert is 35 years old, 35 and 16 as a pro, and he's got 1 inch of height and 4.5 inches of reach over 32-year-old Petroski, who is 9-1 as a pro. Meerschaert, 35 wins, he's got 33 finishes, 27 of them via submission. And that's not some regional scene thing. He's gotten plenty of submissions in the UFC. He's been here for a long time, and he's still every bit as dangerous of a submission artist. And a lot of his submission wins come late in the fight. He wins down the stretch, usually with a rear naked choke or a guillotine. His 16 losses, they're spread out a little bit. He's got 4 TKOs, 8 submissions, and 4 decisions. In the UFC, he's only been submitted once. That was by Jack Hermanson. So that's the one time he's lost by submission in the last, the better part of 10 years or so. So even though that was his primary weakness before he got to the UFC, here in the UFC, most of the time, he's the alpha when it comes to the submission game. His 4 TKO losses, they come most recently. In the last few times he's been finished, the majority have been by knockout. Joseph Pyfer, Khamzat Chimaev, Ian Heinisch, and Thiago Santos, all in the UFC, and of course Joseph Pyfer was 4 months ago. Khamzat Chimaev knocked him dead. That one was 17 seconds, definitely his most brutal knockout loss. But in general, I'd say Meerschaert doesn't have the weakest chin. He's a very savvy fighter. He's underrated on the feet. I mean, he's pretty good at range, got really good body kicks. He almost knocked out Bruno Silva in their fight, was maybe a strike away from getting a knockout before the submission just presented itself. But I think in this fight against Andre Petroski, Petroski will have the power advantage, of course, and I do think Petroski is a little healthier. I'd say even though Meerschaert doesn't have a weak chin, despite the recent TKO losses, he's probably got the worst chin than Andre Petroski. But Gerald Meerschaert, I think, will have an advantage if these two are kickboxing. I'd imagine Meerschaert to have the advantage, especially down the stretch, with opening up with his volume, and especially if he's able to hurt Petroski to the body. I bring up the body because Petroski doesn't have too many weaknesses on paper, but the one that you could look to is potentially cardio. And it's something he's already addressed and tried to patch up. He's got a record of 9-1. The 1 TKO loss comes to Aaron Jeffrey. That was before he got to the UFC, and he just wasn't able to bully Jeffrey, wasn't able to maintain his bullying, and he fell apart in the middle of the fight, and Jeffrey roughed him up and TKO'd him against the cage in round 2. And against Brian Battle, that was on the Ultimate Fighter, so it's an exhibition that doesn't go on his record, but it's the same type of story. He wasn't able to dominate Brian Battle and maintain his dominance, and Brian Battle caught him slipping, and once he got on top of him against the cage, he laced up a ninja choke, and that was it. Petroski was running out of gas and running out of options, and he tapped. And after that, that was in the semifinals of the Ultimate Fighter. Brian Battle went on to win the show, but Petroski made it to the UFC anyway, and he said he's going to look to try to patch up that hole. He wants to be better after the 8th minute of the fight. And he made it to the UFC and immediately got 2 third-round finishes. A third-round TKO over Michael Gilmore, who was a replacement on that season of the show, and then a third-round arm triangle choke over Yao Zhang Hu Yao Zhang. Neither one of those guys is the best fighter, obviously, and they didn't really give him much of a test. But still, for him to get 2 consecutive third-round finishes, I thought it was a nice way to answer those doubts. Then he steamrolled Nick Maximov, and then against Wellington Turman, that's his 1 decision victory. Wellington Turman looked like it was going to be his fight early on. He had his best round early. Petroski, I should say, had his worst round early, and I thought it would only get worse as the fight went on. But instead, Petroski was the one that was sharper down the stretch. He surprised me. I mean, landing good strikes into takedowns, good transitions, sharp takedowns, of course, and great grappling. He was maintained his grappling. Hit the full mount, held him down, had good control. I was really impressed with his work rate down the stretch in that fight. So I can't say he's patched up all the holes. Andre Petroski, he's only got 10 fights as a pro. And I still think there's enough doubt where I will no doubt be betting on Gerald Meerschaert to win down the stretch. I mean, Meerschaert's beaten so many great fighters with these third round, second round submissions. And at the UFC level, Bruno Silva, Dustin Stoltzfus, Deron Wynn, and Trevin Giles all in round 3. Makhmed Muradov and Oscar Piakota in round 2. He's dangerous there. And Petroski, despite being the more powerful guy, I don't think he's got that knockout touch on the feet. I just don't think that's, I mean, of course it could happen here, but I think Meerschaert's got a bit of an underrated chin, and I think Petroski, his main path to victory is still on the ground, Andre Petroski, and I do think he will have the wrestling advantage, the athletic advantage, and he will be able to control Gerald, maybe even submit him, but of course, if things go past round 1, Gerald Meerschaert is going to be a very live dog, as they say, for submission, taking over the fight and getting Petroski out of there down the stretch. So I'm going to pick Andre Petroski by decision. I see what everybody else sees with him, but I will be betting on Gerald Meerschaert, and that will be a round 2 and round 3 finish. Probably submission, but if the odds are shitty, maybe I'll just play it flat or whatever. But I do think the story of the fight, if he is the one who wins, will be cardio and him getting him out of there down the stretch. So those are usually long odds, and this matchup in particular, I think it's just a clash of styles and traits as a fighter where those prop bets will be that much more appealing. But Andre Petroski by decision is the pick, and that's tough to isolate and commit to Petroski because, again, Meerschaert's been finished in 12 of his 16 wins, and Petroski's really, really good on the ground. And, of course, you don't need to keep the fight standing to get a TKO. That could be done on the ground as well. So, really probably just going to stay away from Petroski altogether and just throw a few props on Meerschaert, rounds 2 and 3. Because, again, I see value in almost any Meerschaert matchup with those props, but particularly in this one, where the one weakness his opponent has shown has been cardio failure. So, like, share, subscribe, all that horseshit. Check out my other videos.